Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a book many of you have been curious about and actually recommended, Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck.
Mm,
You flagged this one for us, and, well, our goal here is really to get to the heart of its message. Find those key insights.
right. Kind of a shortcut.
Think of it as your express route to understanding some potentially powerful, maybe even surprising ideas.
Exactly. Because let's face it, in today's world, we're just constantly bombarded. Information overload, endless demand.
Yeah, and this pressure to have it all figured out.
Totally. Manson's book offers a refreshingly different perspective.
Hmm.
We want to explore the core of his thinking, help you pinpoint where to focus your attention and energy.
Essentially where you choose to invest your flex, as he puts it, quite directly.
He does put it directly.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to delve into some really interesting concepts, maybe a bit challenging too.
For sure.
We'll be looking at this idea of not trying, the crucial skill of deciding what deserves our care.
The choosing part.
Yes. And the surprising link between problems and happiness. Also, the dangers of entitlement, the need to be exceptional,
That's a big one.
the power of taking responsibility, embracing failure, rejection, even mortality.
It covers a lot of ground.
It really does. So let's jump in.
Okay. Let's start with something that sounds, well, completely backwards at first. Don't try.
Right.
Manson uses the example of Charles Bukowski, a writer who spent decades as what many would consider a failure. Lots of drinking, gambling, dead-end job.
Bukowski, yeah, not your typical success story image. He was at the post office for years, right? Living this pretty raw life.
Exactly.
Right.
Then, in his 50s, he finally gets a break. Small publisher takes a chance.
And his reaction was almost like a challenge, wasn't it? Stick with the job or risk it all to write.
Right. He chose the risk, and then boom, novels, poetry, huge following. It sounds like the classic perseverance story.
Never give up, chase your dreams. That
Right.
whole narrative.
That's the story we're usually told. The one our culture loves. But here's where it gets interesting. Really interesting. Manson points out Bukowski's tombstone.
What does it say?
It actually reads, "Don't try."
No way. Seriously, after all that, don't try.
Exactly. The last thing you'd expect.
So what's the deal then? How does Manson explain that?
Well, Manson argues Bukowski's success wasn't driven by this, intense ambition to be famous. It came from a place of radical self-acceptance.
Radical self-acceptance, meaning,
He knew his flaws. He didn't hide them. He wrote honestly about his reality. He wasn't trying to be someone he wasn't.
so the don't try was about authenticity, not striving for some external image.
Precisely. His appeal came from that raw, unfiltered honesty, especially about his shortcomings. He put his failures out there
Okay, and connecting this to the listener, we all feel that pressure, right? To be more, do more, look perfect online.
constantly. So Bukowski's story, as Manson sees it, suggests maybe the first step is accepting ourselves, warts and all.
So for someone listening, maybe instead of pushing for that perfect promotion right now, it's about finding what you actually enjoy in your current role.
And excel at, yeah.
Yeah.
Paradoxically, that self-accept, that focus might actually lead to better things down the line. It's
Yeah.
subtle.
Okay, so don't try, as in accept yourself.
Got it.
Got it. Now, Manson moves on to something he calls the feedback loop from hell. That sounds not good.
It's not pleasant, no. It's a real mental trap. Manson describes how our brains tend to get caught in this loop. We react negatively to our own negative emotions. Like getting anxious about feeling anxious
Yes.
or angry about being angry. It just spirals.
Oh, I know that feeling. You dread a confrontation, then you get stressed about the dread itself.
Exactly. Or you're frustrated by your anger issues, and then you get even angrier at yourself for getting angry in the first place. It feeds itself.
Yeah, okay. We've all been there. So what fuels this feedback loop from hell today?
Well, Manson points fingers at consumer culture and social media. Definitely.
Highlight reels.
The endless highlight reels. Everyone seems to be living their absolute best life online, hitting milestones, showing off.
The Ferrari for the teenager, the billionaire with the toilet paper app.
Right. Those kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's easy to compare your messy reality to their curated perfection and feel like you're failing.
Or that something's wrong with you if you're not constantly ecstatic.
Exactly. And that's the hell part. We see these ideals, and when we feel normal negative emotions, which are, let's be clear, totally normal and healthy, we feel bad about feeling bad.
Guilty for being sad, ashamed for feeling insecure.
Yes, that second layer of judgment.
So how do we break out? This is where not giving a fuck comes back in, isn't it? But not indifference.
Precisely. Manson is very clear. It's not apathy. It's not nothing matters. It's about accepting life is messy. Negative emotions are part of the deal.
So you stop fighting the feeling itself.
You stop giving a fic that you feel bad. You interrupt the loop. You acknowledge it. Okay, I feel anxious. But you don't add that layer of self-criticism.
Just accept the feeling without judgment.
Yeah, it's about strategically choosing what deserves your energy, based on your values, not reacting to everything.
It's like saying, this is how I feel right now and that's okay. Doesn't mean I'm broken. Okay? Now he talks about the subtle art of choosing your fecs. This feels central.
It really is. This is the core, I think. Not giving a feck is about being selective, consciously deciding what's genuinely important to you, based on your values.
And he uses that analogy, right? The elderly lady at the grocery store.
Yes, the one getting incredibly upset over a 30-cent coupon. It's a really vivid image.
What's the point there? Why is that 30 cents so crucial to her?
Manson suggests, well, maybe those small savings are one of the few things she feels she controls.
Yeah.
Or maybe it gives her purpose.
Could be loneliness, feeling overlooked.
Could be. So in that context, that tiny thing becomes disproportionately important. She gives a feck about it because maybe there isn't much else meaningful to care about.
So the intensity of her reaction is kind of inversely related to the meaning in her life?
That's the implication. And this leads to the idea of maturity. He quotes Bunk from The Wire.
Oh yeah, what's the quote?
That's what you get for giving a fuck when it wasn't your turn to give a fuck.
Ah, okay.
Maturity, Manson argues, is learning to figure out what truly deserves our attention, our emotional investment, reserving our fucks for what genuinely matters.
It's about being more intentional with our energy as we get older, isn't it? Realizing a lot of the stuff we worried about just didn't matter in the long run.
Exactly. Priority shift. You hopefully get clearer on who you are, more comfortable with imperfections. You realize you can't do it all.
So you start directing energy towards relationships, passions, things with real depth.
Things that genuinely bring meaning. You choose your battles.
Right, being deliberate. Now let's move to another slightly counterintuitive idea. Happiness as solving problems. We usually think happiness is like, no problems.
Manson flips that completely. He starts with the Buddha. Recognizing suffering is just part of being human. Doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, got family, no family.
Suffering is unavoidable. Sounds kind of bleak.
Well, maybe. But then he brings in Disappointment Panda.
Disappointment Panda. Okay, explain that one.
He's this anti-superhero character. His superpower is delivering harsh truths we need for growth, even if we don't like them.
Like mental vegetables.
Exactly.
Right.
Necessary, but maybe unpleasant. And one key truth is that pain, physical, emotional, serves a purpose. It's feedback.
Like touching a hot stove, pain teaches you fast.
Right. Physical pain warns of danger. Emotional pain signals something needs attention, maybe needs to change, internally or externally.
And this leads to Disappointment Panda's main message.
Which is, life is essentially an endless series of problems.
Okay, wow. So instead of hoping for no problems, we should aim for better problems.
Exactly. Manson argues real happiness isn't avoiding problems impossible. It comes from actively engaging with and solving them.
So the process of solving is where the happiness lies.
Yes. Avoiding challenges, feeling incapable, that leads to unhappiness. It's the doing, the solving.
He also brings up the victim mentality here. How does that fit?
He sees it as basically avoiding responsibility for problems and therefore avoiding solving them.
Blaming others, blaming circumstances.
Right. It might feel easier short term, maybe gives a sense of justification, but ultimately it leads to powerlessness, despair, because you're not actually tackling the issues.
And what about emotions? He says they're signposts, not commands.
Yeah, that's a great distinction. Negative emotions, they're signals. Something needs addressing, a call to action.
And positive emotions.
Those are the rewards for taking effective action, solving the problems. But, and this is key, he cautions against being ruled by feelings.
Just because it feels good doesn't mean it is good.
Right. And uncomfortable things might be exactly what we need for growth. Question your emotions. Be curious about them.
He also mentions the sort of cyclical nature of problems. Solving one leads to new ones.
Very realistic view. The person you marry. You'll fight with them. The house you buy. These repairs. The dream job. Has its own stresses.
Trade-offs everywhere. A continuous stream of new things to navigate.
Exactly. Life.
Okay, so happiness is solving problems. But then he says we need to think about choosing your struggles. How does that connect?
It builds directly on that. Since problems are constant, The question isn't how to avoid pain, it's what kind of pain are you willing to sustain.
Okay, example.
He uses the musician idea, dreaming of being a rock star versus actually enjoying the practice, the rehearsals, the grind.
Ah, the romantic outcome versus the often unglamorous process. I think many people fall in love with the result, not the work.
Totally. Manson says who you are isn't defined by what you want, but by what you're willing to struggle for.
So people with great physiques often genuinely enjoy the discipline of working out.
Or successful professionals embrace the long hours, the complexity. The key is finding struggles that feel meaningful to you, worthwhile pain.
So consciously pick the challenges that resonate, that feel engaging even when hard. Okay, let's tackle the problem with entitlement and exceptionalism. Very relevant today.
Very. Manson introduces Jimmy, the perpetual startup guy who never quite makes it.
But thinks he's amazing.
Right. High self-esteem, but no real accomplishments. Talks big, rarely follows through, yet feels he deserves success.
And Manson connects this to the self-esteem movement, maybe emphasizing feeling good over actual achievement.
He suggests that, that the focus shifted. But here's Manson's twist on true self-worth. It's not just about feeling good about your positives. It's more about how you feel about your negatives, your flaws. Someone with real self-worth can acknowledge flaws, take responsibility, work to improve.
Jimmy.
He operates from entitlement, feels he deserves good things, earned or not.
And this entitlement is linked to the tyranny of exceptionalism, fueled by media.
Yeah, we're bombarded with extraordinary stories, overnight successes. Makes average feel inadequate.
So we feel insecure, we compare, and maybe compensate with entitlement or other stuff.
Exactly. Media shows the extremes, the outliers, creates unrealistic expectations. Even harmful ideas about masculinity can feed into this pressure to seem exceptional.
Okay, now a really crucial distinction. Responsibility versus fault. Explain that difference.
Manson uses a personal story. Wrongly accused of bringing drugs to school. He wasn't at fault, obviously.
Right.
But he still had to take responsibility for his reaction. How he handled it, the consequences, he contrasts his family's conflict avoidance with needing healthier communication.
So even if it's not your fault, your response is your responsibility, how you move forward.
Precisely. Manson argues entitlement can sometimes stem from trauma. Jimmy's was business entitlement. Manson recognized relationship entitlement in himself. But the key takeaway, no one else is responsible for your happiness.
You always choose how to react, what to value.
Always. He uses his own breakup. Had to take responsibility for his own emotional state, not just blame his ex.
Even if the ex was at fault for certain things.
Yes. He had to own his part in the dynamic, his choices, his healing, not just be a victim of it.
This leads into the hand we're dealt and choosing our values, accepting limitations, making choices within them.
He uses a powerful example. Documentary on teens with OCD. They didn't choose it, obviously.
But managing it comes down to
managing their values, accepting the intrusive thoughts, the anxiety, but consciously choosing how to live despite them.
He uses a poker analogy here too, right?
Yeah. You don't pick your cards, but you're responsible for how you play the hand you're dealt.
Even if it's a really tough hand, trauma, adversity.
Exactly. You're not to blame for the deal, but the choices moving forward are yours.
This ties into his critique of victimhood chic, constantly finding offense.
He argues that while real victimhood is serious, this trend can be a subtle way to avoid responsibility. Focusing on external blame might feel good temporarily, get attention.
But prevents taking agency, addressing your own stuff.
Right, and this constant outrage can distract from bigger problems, maybe even make it harder to see genuine victimhood.
Okay, let's shift to the dangers of certainty and the power of doubt. We usually want certainty, don't we?
We do. But Manson argues certainty is often the enemy of growth. Nothing's truly certain until it's happened, right? And even then, interpretations differ.
So instead of clinging to beliefs, we should cultivate doubt about our own assumptions.
Healthy doubt, yes.
Yeah.
About our feelings, assumptions, predictions. Being wrong isn't failure.
It's an opportunity.
Exactly. An opportunity to learn, reevaluate values, grow. He mentions that button-pushing experiment.
Oh, yeah.
Shows how easily our minds create meanings, connections that aren't actually there, and then believe them firmly.
We're pattern-seeking machines, and memory is unreliable, the telephone game analogy.
Perfect analogy. Memories get filtered, reconstructed, biased toward what we already believe. He shares that unsettling story of Meredith.
The fabricated abuse memories.
Yeah. Shows how suggestion and values shape belief. His point, trust yourself a bit less. Rigorously challenge your assumptions.
Okay, moving on. Embracing failure and the importance of process connects to enjoying the struggle.
He uses his own story. Graduating during the financial crisis looked like failure initially.
But it created opportunities.
Paradoxically, yes. Initial plans derailed, so he felt less risk-averse, more open. His core value wasn't money, it was freedom, autonomy.
So the failure helped him clarify his values. And he mentions Picasso.
As an example of process over goals, Picasso was relentlessly dedicated to expression, the act of creation. The fame was secondary.
The commitment to the process led to the outcome.
Right. Manson also brings in Dabrowski's theory. Basically, growth often involves intense negative emotions. Inner conflict leads to higher understanding.
So our biggest shifts often come after our worst moments.
Often, yeah. Pain can carve out space for new perspectives.
Now, this next one feels really practical. Action precedes motivation. We usually wait to feel motivated first.
Manson flips it. Like figuring out an old VCR, you don't just read the manual, you push buttons.
Check things out.
Yeah. He calls complex life decisions VCR questions.
Mm-hmm.
Changing careers, asking someone out, setting boundaries.
The main hurdle isn't the action itself, but the fear of the pain involved in taking that first step.
Exactly. Like dropping out of med school you hate or asking adult kids to move out. It's the perceived pain.
And he says action isn't just the result of motivation.
It's also the cause of it. Taking small steps generates momentum, increases motivation, creates an upward spiral. Do something, anything.
Okay. Next, the freedom of commitment and saying no feels almost rebellious today. Keeping options open seems valued.
Manson shares traveling excessively. Seemed great, but felt superficial eventually. Ungrounded.
And he contrasts that with
St. Petersburg. Appreciated the blunt honesty there. Realized true appreciation needs confinement, depth of investment.
So committing to something, a relationship, career, values, means saying no to alternatives.
Inherently. And learning to say no in general to things that drain you, don't align with values, is crucial. For boundaries, emotional health.
Let's go deeper into boundaries and trust in relationships. He kind of skewers Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, satirizes it. Questions why we romanticize these often dysfunctional, dramatic portrayals of love.
He distinguishes unhealthy love from healthy love.
Right. Unhealthy is using each other to escape your own problems. Healthy is supporting each other and addressing individual challenges.
And the key is taking responsibility for your own stuff, being able to give and receive rejection healthily.
Precisely. Healthy relationships have clear boundaries. You own your emotions, don't expect your partner to fix you, or vice versa.
Poor boundaries lead to toxic stuff, like making others responsible for your feelings.
Or feeling responsible for theirs. He mentions the victim and saver dynamic, too. Very common, very unhealthy.
And rebuilding trust after it's broken. It's more than just saying sorry.
It's two steps, really. First, admit the real values that were violated. Honest self-reflection. Second, build a track record. Show improved behavior over time, consistently.
It needs real change, not just words. Okay, leading to freedom through commitment. The paradox of choice. More options, less satisfaction.
Manson explains how avoiding commitment to keep options open denies the deeper rewards of sustained investment in a person, place, path.
He found more freedom by committing to fewer things.
Yes. His writing, partner, location, key friends found liberation in that focus.
What were the benefits he found?
Less distraction, sharper focus, easier decisions, less FOMO, more actual success in what mattered most.
So depth over breadth, basically.
Right.
Especially as you figure out your priorities.
Exactly. Cultivating depth in a few key areas brings more fulfillment than spreading thin superficially.
Finally, the ultimate perspective shifter. And then you die, conundrum mortality, forces you to ask what really matters.
He shares a really moving story. His friend Josh, dying suddenly, had a profound impact.
What was the realization?
Stark realization. Facing inevitable death, why give in to petty fears? Shame, embarrassment, avoiding discomfort is avoiding life itself.
He brings in Ernest Becker, Death, Terror, and Immortality projects.
Our values, legacies we build, ways to cope with the fear of our physical self ending.
But Becker realized the projects themselves can be the problem.
Yeah. Instead of desperately imposing our conceptual self, trying for significance, maybe question that self. Become comfortable with mortality.
And that frees us up to choose values more authentically, less out of fear.
That's the idea, a radical shift.
And the sunny side of death, how is that framed?
Manson describes standing at the Cape of Good Hope. Vastness, finality, superficial worries just vanished.
Forced him to consider his legacy, not achievements, but choices.
Exactly. What he chooses, moment by moment, to give a fuck about. That ongoing choice is the legacy.
Recognizing death is just part of having lived. Reminding yourself makes everything else lighter. He quotes Bukowski again.
Yeah, about being terrorized and flattened by life's trivialities. Confronting death helps put trivialities in perspective.
The main lesson from Josh's death.
Ultimately, there's nothing to be afraid of. Reminding yourself of death makes everything else lighter, less scary.
So, to wrap this up for you, our listener, this subtle art seems to be about conscious choice, what truly holds value for you.
Right. And accepting challenges, negative emotions are just part of it. Taking ownership of your values, your reactions.
Seeing failure as learning, not an endpoint.
Definitely. And ultimately facing mortality to live more authentically now.
And perhaps the final thought we can leave you with is, take some time. Honestly consider what facts you're giving your energy to right now.
Do they genuinely align with what brings you meaning?
Yeah.
Fulfillment. It's a question worth sitting with, really pondering.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing this source with us. It's certainly been a really deep dive.